Titan Base had survived methane storms, reactor hiccups, and 3 separate incidents involving interns and improperly sealed sample jars, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared the crew for Dr. Floss's latest breakthrough. Dr. Floss, a Rigelian scientist with 4 elbows and the boundless optimism of someone who has never once read a safety manual, stood proudly in the center of Lab 6 as alarms wailed around him.
"It works," he declared, mandibles clicking with delight. "The carboflora is successfully consuming waste at the rate of 4.7 times higher than projected."
"It's also consuming the floor," said Chief Engineer Mara Vance, pointing at the widening hole where the plant's roots were happily dissolving Titan-grade polymer. The carboflora had started as a brilliant idea, a bioengineered plant that could digest the station's ever-growing piles of non-recyclable waste. But somewhere between eco-friendly solution and lab demonstration, it had developed a taste for, well, everything. The plant pulsed in the center of the room, a mass of glossy green tendrils and bioluminescent fronds. Every few seconds a vine snapped out, wrapped around something, a datapad, a chair, a very expensive microscope, and slurped it into a glowing central bulb with a sound that could only be described as enthusiastic. Mara tapped her comm. "Control, we have a situation." Control responded with the calm, measured tone of someone who had already accepted their fate. "We know. You just eat the door to the cafeteria." Dr. Floss clapped 2 of his hands together.
"Marvellous! Its appetite is expanding."
"That's the problem," Mara said. "If this thing reaches the reactor core, we're going to be the galaxy's first biodegradable crater." As if on cue, the carboflora shuddered, then launched a vine toward the ceiling. Panels popped loose, sparks flew. Someone screamed in the hallway. Together, they sprinted down the corridor as the carboflora burst through the lab wall behind them, vines slapping the floor like hungry eels. But Titan Base wasn't staffed by quitters, or by people who read instructions, or in Floss's case, by people who believed in the concept of too much enthusiasm. "Okay," Mara said, panting. "New plan. We lure it somewhere it can't eat."
Floss perked up. "The cryo-storage vault. The walls are made of reinforced tritonium, completely indigestible."
"Perfect. And once it's inside, we freeze it." Floss hesitated.
"Freeze it? Permanently?"
"Unless you want it to eat the moon." Floss considered this.
"I do not."
They reached the vault, threw open the heavy door, and waited. The carboflora surged around the corner, glowing brighter now, humming with metabolic joy. It lunged. Mara and Floss dove aside as the plant barreled into the vault. Mara slammed the door. Floss hit the cryo-seal. A deep, resonant whoomp echoed through the corridor. Silence. Then, faintly from inside the vault, a disappointed gurgle. Mara leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "Next time you invent something, Floss, maybe start with a smaller appetite?" Titan Base had barely finished sealing the cryo-vault when the next crisis alert chimed.
"Unidentified vessel approaching," Control announced. "Designation, Leno's Interstellar Lawn Maintenance."
Mara frowned. "We didn't call for lawn maintenance." Dr. Floss perked up.
"I did, as a precautionary measure. The carboflora is technically a plant."
Mara stared at him. "You called a gardener?"
"A specialist," Floss corrected, as the docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk.
The airlock cycled open, releasing a puff of Titan's orange haze, and out stepped Warwick Lano Lands. He wore steel-cap boots, shorts that defied the concept of insulation, and a sun-bleached hat that had clearly seen more battles than most soldiers. Slung over his shoulder was a whippersnipper the size of a small missile. Behind him, hovering on anti-grav skids, was a bright red Victor mower, retrofitted with thrusters and a roll cage. "G'day," Leno said, chewing something that might once have been gum. "Heard you've got a bit of a weed problem." Leno never meant to work with plants. He originally applied for a job at the local council as a grounds aesthetic technician, thinking it was interior design. By the time he realized it meant mowing public parks, he'd already been issued a high-vis vest and a whippersnipper with a name tag. He tried to quit. The HR rep said, "Just give it a week." The grass said nothing, but Lano felt charged. That was the beginning. On his third day, Lano revved up the whippersnipper to tackle a patch of overgrown clover. As he approached, a gust of wind made the clover tremble, and Lano interpreted it as fear. He froze. He whispered, "I'm not here to hurt you." A jogger passing by said, "Mate, are you all right?" Lano replied, "I think the clover needs reassurance." From that moment on, he refused to rip anything apart. He insisted on humane trimming, which involved announcing his intentions to the lawn, giving the weeds a chance to self-correct, or apologizing after every cut. His supervisor wrote in his file, "Technically effective, emotionally concerning." Lano's turning point came when he discovered that plants responded better to him when he talked to them like co-workers rather than enemies. He developed a system he called botanical mediation, which included conflict resolution, negotiating territory disputes between grass and weeds, boundary setting, explaining to vines that climbing the gazebo is fine, but strangling it is not, emotional de-escalation, playing soft jazz to calm hedges before pruning. He once held a 45-minute intervention with a patch of crabgrass. It worked. The crabgrass receded out of respect. Word spread. Some thought he was a genius. Some thought he was unwell. Most thought he was both. But his lawns were immaculate. Not because he dominated them, but because he negotiated with them. His parks became the only green spaces in the district where weeds voluntarily relocated, where hedges grew in symmetrical shapes to make Lano proud, and grass stayed at regulation height without being cut. His co-workers started calling him the plant listener. Lano preferred botanical consultant. The plants called him nothing, but he felt they appreciated him. "G'day," Lano said, chewing something that might once have been gum. "Heard you've got a bit of a weed problem?" Mara blinked. "It's a genetically engineered hyperadaptive polymer digesting..." Lano held up a hand. "Love a challenge." Before anyone could stop him, he marched straight toward the cryo-vault. Floss scuttled after him.
"Be careful, it's extremely dangerous."
"Mate," Lano said, patting the whippersnipper like a beloved pet. "So am I." He hit the override on the vault. Frost billowed out. The garboflora, sluggish but waking, emitted a low, hungry gurgle. Lano grinned. "Righto," he muttered, surveying the scene and absent-mindedly putting down his whippersnipper and parking the Victor with a double beep from his remote. "This is more like it." Lano stepped fully into the vault, boots crunching on the frost, hands on hips like he was inspecting a misbehaving hedge rather than a hyperadaptive polymer-eating monstrosity. "All right, big fella," he said, voice calm, almost soothing. "You've had a big day. Floors, doors, cafeteria, infrastructure. You're all worked up. You need to breathe." The garboflora emitted a wet, offended gurgle. A tendril snapped out, swatting at him with the enthusiasm of a toddler throwing a tantrum. Lano didn't flinch. He just nodded, as if this confirmed a private theory. "Yep, classical emotional overflow. Happens when you don't set boundaries early." Another vine lashed out, this one faster, more deliberate, and wrapped around his leg, tugging with the clear intention of dragging him toward the glowing central bulb. Mara gasped. Floss made a noise that only a Rigelian throat could produce. Lano sighed, like a man who dealt with a far worse from an overzealous bougainvillea. "Mate," he said, looking down at the vine constricting his calf, "don't make me bring out the big guns." The garboflora tightened its grip. "Oi, don't make me get the Roundup." The garboflora recoiled so violently a frost panel fell off the wall. "What is Roundup?"
A myth, a legend, a chemical so feared that even whispering its name makes weeds behave.
Floss's mandibles clicked nervously.
"Please tell me you do not actually possess this substance."
"Course not, but Mr. Sookie too big for his own pot over there doesn't know that." He leans into the plant and adds loudly for the plant's benefit, "And I've got a concentrate version." The plant immediately curled its vines inward like a scolded puppy. A faint, pitiful whine echoed through the vault. The garboflora hunched over, bioluminescence dimming in shame. "Rightio," Leno continued, satisfied. Now that we've got mutual respect sorted, he reached into his pocket and produced a slightly squashed lamington. The plant froze, tendrils quivering. Here, something to take the edge off. Lano held it out like a peace offering. Yeah, no, I get it. I get cranky too when I skip smoko. The Garboflora leaned forward, sniffed, and with surprising delicacy accepted the lamington. Its fronds relaxed, its glow softened. For the first time since its creation, it looked manageable. Did you just negotiate with it? Plants respond better when you talk to them after a snack. The Garboflora burped a small puff of icing sugar and coconut. Lano patted it gently. Attaboy. Now, let's sort out some proper boundaries, big fella. You can eat waste, you can eat scraps, you can even eat whatever that thing Floss called lunch, but you do not eat structural supports. That's non-negotiable. Otherwise the whole station will be blown off into space. You included, buckalugs, and we don't want that. The plant wilted slightly. Is it obeying you? Nah, it's just embarrassed. Plants hate being told off in public. Turning back to the plant, he added with a wink, and if you're very good, next time I'll bring a packet of Tim Tams. And to the scientists, he whispered with an elbow nudge, the caramel ones. No genetically engineered hyperactive polymer digesting plant can resist those. And that's why Lano is the bloke you ring when your greenery gets ideas above its station. When a plant goes troppo, the galaxy calls Lano.